Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. Listeners, today you are all in for a real treat. This episode is all about future-proofing your email campaigns. And we work with lots of senders here at Validity, and the work has really revealed that, especially in recent years, many email marketers have found themselves on the back foot. Whether it's Apple's mail privacy protection, forcing senders to go beyond opens to understand email engagement, the EU's GDPR legislation that essentially codified subscriber consent laws, or Gmail and Yahoo's recent bulk sender requirements, many senders have just found themselves waiting for the next email bomb to drop and then scrambling to react.
So joining us today is a genuine titan of the industry, Al Iverson. Now, Al's LinkedIn bio focuses on his deliverability creds, and they're pretty impressive, but they don't even start to do justice to his broad and deep knowledge and expertise of the email ecosystem. His highly influential website, Spam Resource, has more than 1,500 articles covering almost every email-related topic you could imagine. And he's had more than 4 million visits since it launched. And we're super fortunate to have Al with us today as we discuss which of today's email best practices are likely to manifest themselves as tomorrow's newest bulk sender requirements. Welcome to the show, Al. It's such a pleasure and privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, this is awesome. It's wonderful to get a chance to chat with you and sort of expand my horizons and figure out what have I not talked about before that we can actually maybe I'll turn this into a follow-up article on Spam Resource if we come up with something new.
Oh, yes. And we usually kick off each episode of Email After Hours with an icebreaker question or hot take. But since Guy and I both suspect that this entire episode is going to be one hot take after another, we're just going to dive right in. And we'll start with perhaps the obvious. So both Yahoo and Gmail have effectively said that email marketers have only seen the beginning with their recent requirements. And Al, we would love your take on what these mailbox providers might begin to require next. But let's start with the DMARC requirement. I wonder exactly what you're going to say here, because we have had guests who are like, it's useful in that it provides reporting when we have a DMARC P equals none policy. It's weak from a security perspective. Would you agree on that? And tell us your thoughts about whether or not we're going to see a quarantine or reject requirement sooner.
Yeah, definitely. So DMARC is sort of an interesting thing. It's a two-headed monster that lives in the realm of deliverability and email security. And most people, email marketers in particular, learned about it very recently within the past 7 to 9 months from those updated sender requirements being announced by Yahoo and Google back in, I think, October, right? And so everybody was sort of forced to quickly adapt by adopting DMARC, by implementing DMARC often for the first time. And so with that came people struggling to understand. They didn't really know what DMARC was or how best to comply with it. And so they looked to their email service providers or deliverability blogs like mine and others, and your resource center and all these different places to figure out what is the best, simplest way to comply with these new requirements. And so you had this rush of people who implemented DMARC, but they did so with a policy of none. So basically they turned on DMARC, sort of like you turned on the circuit breaker for your security system, but you didn't actually turn the switch to turn the security bit of it on, right? So many people have rushed. Just like I track the top 10 million domains month over month. And even from going back, I'm actually going to pull it up on my screen here, going back like 13 months, 6 to 12 months, we had maybe 1.1 million people of that top 10 domains, 1.1 million of them implemented DMARC. Now we're up to just about 2 million. So there's this huge increase in DMARC over the last year. But to that point about none or an insecure policy, the vast majority of these, more than 1.3 million of these new records are all set up with P equals none as their DMARC policy. All these domains are set up in this way that isn't secure. That's sort of setting the stage, setting the groundwork where people rushed to implement the bare minimum requirements that Google and Gmail put out there, right? So they started there, and a lot of people think they check the box, they're done, and they can just walk away and not think about it again. Well, that's where future proofing and thinking about what's coming next comes into play, because it's not exactly what I think. I'm totally going to try to say what I think other people are thinking here. And I don't think that's what Yahoo and Gmail were hoping for. I think they were really hoping that people would fully, more securely implement DMARC to the point of actually being able to use it for domain protection. Because that's sort of the last bit there, the last sort of forgotten about part of DMARC is that it's actually a security feature and a very important one. It still ties through to deliverability for more reasons than it being just a requirement, right? If you don't want somebody to damage your domain reputation by spamming and spoofing as you've got to protect that domain. And DMARC is that, hey kids, get off my lawn setting. It's what protects your lawn to keep people from pretending to be you, to pretending to use your resources. And so that's that last bit there. We've got all these new domains, that have newly set up DMARC, and they haven't implemented the security part of it. And so now getting back to your question, what's coming next is we know that Yahoo and Google had hoped that there would be sort of an organic transition into more secure usage of DMARC, and they're not seeing that. And so I think they're going to look and say, what caused change previously? And that was us making these mandated requirements, moving from best practices to absolute must-have to get the mail in the door. And so similarly to them requiring any DMARC, a future state very clearly is that they're going to require a more restrictive DMARC setting, a P equals reject or P equals quarantine. They have hinted at this. Different people have talked to different people. I haven't had somebody tell me this explicitly, but I still very strongly think it's coming. It's the natural evolution of it, right? There could be other stuff too that we don't necessarily haven't thought about or we need to think about, but DMARC really is the big one there.
And just to add on that, there's the Yahoo Google mailbox provider side of this thing where they want to be responsible and they want to protect their users, of course, but also just because we were, of course, on Spam Resource, as we always are. But you published something about the NSA and the FBI were putting out warnings pretty recently that North Korean hackers are potentially even targeting domains that have a P equals 9 DMARC policy right now. Like, this is real-time protection.
Yes, and it puts the ESPs in the unfortunate position of having to have recommended a policy setting that leaves domains insecure, when we know now that bad actors are actively searching for those insecurely set domains. And so it doesn't mean that the bookstore down the street that somebody in North Korea is looking to hack and pretend to send mails as the bookstore, right? If you look at the NSA warning, it was very specific. North Korea's intelligence efforts were focused on how to gather that technical data, that technical intelligence by pretending to be entities involved in East Asian studies, right? So universities and companies and government agencies and even probably defense contractors and who knows else. Those were the targets of North Korea to pretend to be them, to reach out to others in that sphere, to try to get them to give up useful information, useful data, useful intelligence to further North Korea's intelligence aims. But where one bad guy leads, another one is likely to observe and follow, right? That's the key there. It's not that the bookstore is going to get hacked by North Korea or spoofed by North Korea. It's that bad guys, smaller bad guys, less focused bad guys, more money-oriented bad guys, look at this, see what North Korea is doing, and think to themselves, is there a way that I can use this same exploit to make some money, to whatever my ends are, to spoof, fish, spearfish, whatever. And so they're looking for methodologies, and this hands them a methodology to be able to go after other senders. That was the scary thing about the North Korea thing to me. It's not really, I have very little to do with East Asian politics. So you could say, I could look at it and go, well, nobody's going to try to spoof spamresource.com. But later down the line, some other bad guy could look at that and want to target me for whatever reason, just to make money, harass, threaten, whatever. Right now, they know that if I didn't secure my domain, if they saw a weak DMARC policy, P equals none, that my domain could be at risk of that. So that, to me, that's a scary thing, is that people will be inspired by the North Korea attacks and use it to attack others.
Yeah. No, there's always a new threat coming around the corner. Anyway, listen, I mean, we could have probably spoken all afternoon about DMARC, but there's more questions. And another of the new Gmail and Yahoo requirements was, of course, the implementation of one-click list unsubscribe as defined by RFC 8058. But that's only half of the equation, because senders must also remove subscribers within 48 hours. And I guess especially if you are in the US, you might be thinking, wow, that's a bit speedy when CanSpan said, 10 days. But I think the way that we're thinking about this is that even 48 hours is quite generous. We're in a day and age now where stuff like this ought to be able to happen in pretty much real time. And do we think that's where this particular requirement's going to evolve towards? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, if they can update a database so that I can reserve my hotel room in 39 seconds, they don't need 7 to 10 days to log my unsubscribe. I know, going back to my director of deliverability days and dealing with the abuse box, getting the feedback, the complaints from people, one of the things that just absolutely inflamed people was getting a response to their unsubscribe request that says, it may take another 7 to 10 days before we're fully able to process your request. So basically, when somebody unsubscribes, if you respond with, that's great, thanks for unsubscribing, I'm going to spam you for another week, that's insulting. That set people off. People do not want to hear that. If people are telling you that they want the mail to stop, it should stop instantly. And in this day of live API calls, online databases, the ability to have basically everything you want delivered to your house within an hour. You push Uber Eats right here in my phone, and if I can make a sandwich show up, they ought to be able to make an unsubscribe show up in a similar amount of time.
When you put it in sandwich terms, Al, obviously, it seems pretty reasonable. And of course, there is a third requirement, which is maintaining a spam complaint rate below 0.3%. And both Yahoo and Google have said that this rate is generous, much like that 48-hour removal window for unsubscribes. And in one of our recent State of Email webinars, Marcel Becker at Yahoo said that if a program spam complaint rate is consistently hovering around that 0.3% mark, they've already got a major problem on their hands. So I guess the question is, do you think that spam complaint rate tolerance could and perhaps should come down even further?
I suspect it's coming, because you can tell that a lot of these new enhanced compliance requirements are sort of targeted in a way where they might start low to slightly minimize the barrier to compliance, with an eye towards increasing that over time. They want to see it's unfair to say what they can get away with. It's not what they can get away with, but what they can get people to buy in on and reasonably implement in a reasonable amount of time. So it's really about, on top of that, it's about another example of taking something that was already best practice and turning it into the law. Right. And so that's not that great of a leap for people who are already paying attention to these sort of things. Nor are complaint rate warnings or cutoffs that new. Right. If you go back into history, this is one of those places where institutional knowledge comes in handy. AOL sort of originated the whole concept of feedback based on complaint rates. Right. They had that first feedback loop. They had the report card process where they would send out warnings and notifications and potentially block based on the specific spam percentage rates over your past week or so of sending. So they would proactively notify. And then sort of sad that sort of got lost over time, because it was a great feedback mechanism where a mailbox provider took an active role into reminding marketing centers that they have to sort of keep their nose clean, right? That they have to abide by best practices. So while we've lost those proactive notifications over the years, there's always the requirement to keep spam complaints low regardless, right? From going back to the period of time where complaints actually cause blocking to a more modern era where just before where we are now, Gmail was very reticent to block anything. They very rarely blocked in the realm of deliverability. Yeah, security stuff and some other stuff, they certainly block stuff. But if you were a bad marketing sender, you were much more likely to go to the spam folder than get blocked outright. And so the spam complaints were still a component of that, right? They moved from this industry moved from a model that was blocking oriented to feedback and engagement oriented, with complaints still being a strong component of that, back to sort of swinging back towards this complaint model again, where they're just outright saying, hey, we've let you get away with high spam complaint rates for too long. We tried to deal with it by putting your mail in the spam folder. clearly that's not enough feedback to drive a change. So we're sort of ratcheting up how we're going to respond to that. And basically, again, it's just an outgrowth of what was already required. And this is sort of, they tried the carrot, maybe spam folder placement was the carrot, and now this blocking is the stick. But the complaint rate concerns were already there. The only problems that I had with those were with marketers who tried to run it so close to the razor's edge. These are the people who every time you consult with them, they want to know, and what am I doing? And what I'm doing, is it legal? Not, is it best practice? And so these people are trying to go, like, if you get so close to the line where you're legal, you're getting away with it, you're getting mail delivered, you're getting so close to that line, if they move that line by 1 inch, that suddenly you're blocked, you were too close to the lines. Talk about future proofing, right? That's the perfect example of not future proofing, being very focused on only results for today and not really being in it for the long haul.
No, that's right. And we've seen examples of that with our sender certification program over the years, haven't we, Danielle? Those often, it's funny, it's the sketchiest senders that are the best at sort of coming up with really creative ways to manipulate their data to get as close to that tolerance as possible, just as Al was describing.
Think of how much money and time and strategy they spend on trying to get around the rules versus all of the clients, the successful clients that we deal with in consulting. If you just do opt-in and don't spam people, like, you've just saved yourself 90% of the headache of having to work around a rule.
This has been such a great conversation today, and my only worry is that we've hardly even covered half of what we were planning to fit into today's episode. Not quite sure what to do about that, Danielle. Any bright ideas?
I think it's time for our first two-parter of Email After Hours. So we are going to pick this awesome conversation up again with Al Iverson in 1 week's time. So join us again.
I think that's a fantastic idea. See you all in 7 days. Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.